All right, guys, so I think at 3:30, I'm going to talk a little bit more over in the cage. Those are going to be more individualized drills. What I'm going to talk about right now is what I like to call adjustment training. And this is a big part of, within our organization, how we like to train. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why we do it and how we do it and kind of some of the benefits that you get from it. So with adjustment training, the way that we look at it is you have two types of training. You got block training and you got random training. So this is kind of the sexy thing now. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but block training is basically if I put a tee up right here with a hitter and I tell him take 100 swings to hit it off the back of the net, they're eventually going to figure out how to do it. So you're helping them create this one specific skill. Okay, so random training is a little bit different. Random training then is as soon as they start to get good, say we're doing the same thing, go ahead, hit the ball off the back net. We put the tee right there. I say, go ahead and do it. He takes one swing, and I say, okay, I'm going to move the tee. And I move it to a different spot. So I'm constantly putting that hitter then in situations that are, one, kind of challenging, and he's having to, two, figure out how to do things on his own. So I'm a huge believer in, as a hitting coach, as a coach in general, I think our jobs are to be able to prepare those guys and empower them enough to where they don't need us anymore. I'm a huge believer in that. Like, if you're creating hitters and you're working with hitters and you're getting them to the point where they don't feel like they can be successful without you, you haven't done your job. And at our level, when our guys go from rookie ball to short season to low A to high A to double A to triple A to the big leagues, think about that. If they go through all those steps and they have 6 different steps that they're going through, they've got 6 different coaches, 6 different hitting coaches. If they're only reliant on the hitting coach that they have and it's not that great of a hitting coach, then they aren't going to be successful. That's not how it works. We have to empower them enough to be able to figure these things out on their own. So going back to this random training, the way I kind of explain it, and this will make a little bit more sense in a second, but if I told you to figure out what 39 times 24 is, right, you could figure it out. It might take you a little bit of time, maybe some of us a little bit more time than others. For me, I'd probably get a calculator out, but I could just tell you that it's 936. Okay, so you now know that 39 times 24 is 936 without having to do the math, without having to do any of this stuff. You now know that. So if I ask you then in a minute, what's 39 times 24, you're going to be able to say it's 936. And I ask you another minute after that, what 39 times 24 is, you're going to be able to say it's 936. So what have I taught you? What have I done for you? All I've done is help you memorize what 39 times 24 is. It's 936. I haven't actually taught you. I haven't helped you figure out your own way to figure out how to do it. Right? And that's what all this adjustment training and all this stuff I'm going to talk about is kind of getting at, is putting them in situations, putting them in scenarios to where they're having to figure out their own stuff, which at the end of the day, if they figure it out, I promise you, when they go up there in the box, they're going to feel so much more confident about who they are as a hitter and who they are as a person because they felt like they were able to do it on their own. And that's what we're searching for. So I'm going to go through off the tee, side toss, front toss, BP, machines, all sorts of different drills. These are more so for teams and how to set up different team practices. A lot of the stuff that we do during spring training. So I'll start off with the tee. It's one of my favorite ones. You have a tee that's on the inside part of the plate that's a little bit further out front. It's lower. You got a tee that's on the outside part of the plate. It's higher. What you can't tell, and I turned the sound off on it because if it's going through loop right here, it's going to be really annoying. But at the point that he gets his leg up as high as it's going to be, that's when I tell him either in or I tell him away. And he's got to make that swing and make the adjustment to go in or away. And it's really challenging. When we first started doing this is a kid I did it with a couple weeks ago. And I kid you not, there were 3 times in a row where he swung right in the middle, and he didn't even hit either one of them. And so it's really cool. And you can sit there, and as a coach, you can sit there and tell him, hey, try this with your hands, try this with your body, try this with your barrel. If you try and do that, I promise you, you're going to think this kid right into a downward spiral. and then he's going to continue swinging at the pitch in the middle. Let him figure it out. I think a lot of times we as coaches, we don't give players enough credit that they're going to start to figure things out on their own. So this is a big part of it. It's different with every player when you do this drill. You got some guys that go up with a leg kick. That's when you say away or in. You got some guys that double tap. That's when you say away or in. So it's when they're as far away from the pitcher as they're going to be, that's when you start telling them. And when they get really good, maybe you start delaying it a little bit and making the decision a little bit later. Next one then is it's an up and down adjustment. Okay, so this one's a little bit different, and I didn't have a clip for it, but this is me throwing into a net. But imagine that I'm off to the side again telling him fastball up or down. And so he's having to make his adjustment off that again. You can start to mix it up too and start to associate different words or different pitches with each one. So we'll say that for the one that's up, I tell him that's going to be the curveball. For the one that's down, that's going to be a fastball. So instead of saying up or instead of saying down, when he gets to this spot, I say curveball. And he knows to associate that with the curveball that's up, and so he swings at the one up. So you can kind of mix it up, and that's what you're always doing. I think you're putting them in situations where as soon as they start to get comfortable, as soon as they feel like they're starting to figure it out, change it up on them. As soon as you change it up on them, it makes them figure out a different way to do it. Because guess what? When they get into a game, you're not in the box with them. They got to figure it out on their own. Next one then, another challenging one is just you're adding a third tee to it. So now it's away, middle, or in, and it's the same thing. You tell them away, middle, or in when they get to that same spot. So it's the advancement from the other drill. And I promise you it's challenging. When you're coaching this, when you're having them do this, don't coach so much on the ball flight. Just coach and give them praise and give them feedback on whether they're swinging at the right one or not. If they do, they're going to figure it out. They'll figure out what it feels like to get their best swing off on these pitches.
You let them hit without you saying something first? Try each one?
No, yeah. So the question was, do I let them hit each one individually before? And the answer to that is no. If they want to, when I do let them do it, it's just to get loose, and then I say, okay, let's get right into it. Let's figure it out. Because the first one, if you looked at it, so the tee that's away, it's really high. And the tee that's in, it's a little bit further down. So not only are you covering away and in, but you're covering up and down too. So they have to figure out a way to get themselves in a position when the ball's being released where they can make their adjustments up, they can make their adjustments down, they can make their adjustments away, they can make their adjustments in. And that's ultimately, if we're creating and drawing up a hitter, like our prototypical hitter, we want them to be able to cover the biggest area of the strike zone. And so if we can put them in situations where they can feel like they're doing it, we've empowered them to do it. So the next part then is side toss. This is one I love to do with hitters. All it is, and you can't quite tell, we're kind of synced up. Him and I have worked together for a long time, so we're kind of synced. But what it is when I side toss to guys, I like to have them move first. Instead of me going and me starting to flip and then him going off me, I like the hitter to go first. And I like doing it because it puts the emphasis back on the hitter and what he's doing. So as soon as he starts going, he has to figure out, okay, I'm starting really early. I got to figure out what to do with my body. Otherwise, I'm just going to start going forward, or I'm going to start leaking forward, or I'm just going to get stuck. So it forces the hitter then to figure out what they do with their body and what they do with their swing whenever they start getting really early. Because we as coaches, we've been there before. We tell kids, just start earlier, start earlier. And if they don't understand what to do with their body when you tell them to start earlier, they're just going to do this and then go back. So it doesn't do them any good. So you have to teach them what it feels like to start early. We'll do this off side toss as well, or front toss as well. So this is the next one we like to do. It's the hitter stays in the same spot, and the flipper moves further out front and further back. Be careful with this. I've worked with younger kids before, and I've had balls go straight over my head. So be careful. But what you're doing, you're just going back and forth. And all you're doing, we were talking earlier about covering away and in. This is helping the hitter to learn what it's like to feel like they're covering the back side of the strike zone and then covering the front side of the strike zone. Great hitters, in my opinion, one, they can cover 4 quadrants of the strike zone. They can also cover the back part of the strike zone and the front part of the strike zone. So you're working on it there. You're tossing it deep, then moving out and tossing it out front. So he's constantly having to figure out and feel what it's like to get deep in the zone and then what it's like to get it out front. So then we'll go into fastball changeup. It's pretty self-explanatory. I think you guys have probably all done this before. The way that we'll start this is I'll go sequenced. So the first one will be fastball, the second one will be changeup, fastball, changeup, and he'll know, and so he'll be able to react with his body while knowing what's kind of coming. When we start getting good at that, then it's randomized, and he has no idea what's coming. And then this is where you as coaches be careful, because if you get a hitter that starts being really worried about the off-speed pitch, they're going to start sitting on the off-speed pitch, and if you throw them a fastball, they're going to do this, and it's going to come right at you. So it's a great teaching tool to tell them and to get them to buy into what it's like to feel being on time for a fastball all the time, and then make your adjustments off that. I tell hitters this all the time. You can, as a hitter, slow yourself down to hit an off-speed pitch. It's so hard to speed yourself up to hit a fastball. So hard. Some of the best hitters in the world can't do that. So always be able to be able to be ready to hit a fastball and then adjust from there. One of the more challenging ones that we do, and it's making the adjustment then from up to down. And look at how much he's having to cover. Look at how high that toss is. It's belt high, maybe even a little bit above. And then when you hold on to it, you don't toss it, then he's got to make that adjustment to tilt to be behind that ball that's down on the tee. What you'll start to realize, and we'll see it with the next clip too, is with that ball that's down, if he gets too far forward and he can't control his forward move, every time that he swings and you hold on to that ball and it's down there at the bottom, he's going to hook the crap out of it, and it's going to go for him straight to the first baseman. So he's going to realize, I'm not doing this right, or he's just going to swing and miss at it. So it teaches him to figure out how to control his forward move and be behind the ball. Great drill, challenging drill. So then the next one, we have an inverted tee. You guys have these tees, the backspin tee is what it's called. So most of you don't, and I don't either. And I got in trouble for this, but I made that, and it cost me like $15 to make, or you can go buy one for like $150. So it's not that challenging to make. But what this is then is, if you can tell, there's a ball that's in that tee that's hanging down this way. And it's the same idea as the ball that's on the low tee. I either toss it below that one ball, or I hang on to it, and then he hits the ball that's up top. So once again, he's making adjustments from going down to up. The other one is making the adjustment going from up to down. So you're constantly putting them in situations where they got to figure out how to make it work. Challenging. So then we'll go into front toss. A lot of the same stuff. So this is just front toss, fastball, changeup. Same idea. Start with it where it's sequenced, and then move to the point where it's not sequenced and it's randomized. So from the side, we had moving out front with the toss and then moving back. This, instead of, you can set up 2 plates. So instead of the flipper having to move back and forth, the flipper stays in the exact same spot. The hitter then just moves back and forth. And so what it teaches you, you're just creating different angles for the hitters. So for when he's right here, that ball's coming into him, so it's more like a right-handed fastball coming in. And then when he moves that other tee, it's more of a left-handed fastball or left-handed slide that's kind of coming from behind him, and he's got to figure out how to stay on it. So both challenging things, and you got to move back and forth. You can, once again, you can sequence it to where you're going 2 swings on this one plate, and then you're going 2 swings on the other. You can make it to where it's 1 and 1, 2 and 1, whatever you want to do. You switch it up. And if you feel like they're starting to get comfortable with it, change it up. One of the more challenging ones that we do off front toss, but you have a tee that's set up away, and there's a lot of pieces to this. But the tee is set up away, and as the flipper, you're either tossing it in or you're holding on to it. If they hold on to it, then you're hitting the ball away. If they toss it, you're tossing it in, and they're trying to go over the pull side outfielder's head. This is actually me hitting. It actually looks like it's not bad. But he told me what was coming, so it wasn't random. But the idea then is you're trying to get them to learn and what it feels like to cover both sides. Again, so what you'll start to hear from players is they'll start to set their sights up to where it's middle, and then it's easier to make adjustment. If I'm set up middle, or my thoughts are that the pitch is going to be middle, it's easier to make the adjustment this far away and this far in. If I'm only worried about or thinking about the one in, then he holds on to it, then that pitch that's away, that ball that's on the tee away, is so far away that they try creating space for themselves, then it just becomes a throw with their hands, and they got no shot. So you'll see it, and you'll see it when you're flipping, whether a guy's putting themselves in a good situation or good position to be able to hit both. That's what you're coaching. Challenging. And the way that you kind of start this, too, it's the same way. Tell them, for the first round, I'm going to go toss in. The next time, go ahead and swing it the one away. I'm going to go toss in, swing it the one away. Toss away, toss in, swing it the one away. And then they start kind of figuring out, kind of to your point, of letting them do it first. They start to feel what it feels like on each one, and then you start mixing it in, and it's random, and then it becomes hard. So going with the low tee again, it's from front toss. You're either tossing it above the ball or you're holding on to it. When you hold on to it, they're hitting the one down. You'll see here, I think here in a couple, he ends up taking a pitch that he should have swung at. I think it might be right here. No. But he ends up taking one, and you'll see that when he takes it, he realizes that when he takes it, he was in such a bad position, he was over the top of that ball, that he had no chance to hit it. So if he would have taken the swing, he would have swung right over the top of it. So it teaches him, this is a big dude that I coached him when he was at the University of Missouri, and big dudes like this, they don't need to move a real long ways forward. They can kind of control their weight back there behind the ball, and they can just kind of sit on their back leg and turn. So for him, he doesn't need to make that big forward move. So when he did, he got himself in trouble because you're taking a big dude that doesn't need to move that far. He can create his juice from staying back there and being behind it. So great drill for him to be able to learn how to stay behind it. Same thing with that tee. I made that tee for $10 or so. So instead of going out and spending a ton of money on them, be creative. If you can get anything from this, just be creative because there's so many ways to look at things and look at drills and look at different techniques that guys are doing and think about it creatively. And I always look at it as if I'm setting up a drill, if I'm setting something up or I'm putting guys in a situation, my first thought is always, is it going to be challenging? If it's not, then I scratch it. And I say, okay, then we aren't going to do that. If I can say, yes, okay, it's going to be a little bit challenging for these guys, then I start to formulate the plan of how we're going to actually do it. So with that thought in mind, I was talking to somebody about this earlier, but we want guys to be a little bit tougher when they get in the box. I talked about it last night. We want their mentalities to feel like when they get to the box, they're super confident with what they're doing. When you put them in challenging situations and they figure it out, they're going to become a little bit tougher. So instead of just telling hitters, hey, you got to be tougher. Hey, you got to be tougher. You got to be tougher. Put them in these situations all the time. They'll get tougher. One of my best experiences with this ever was when I first got to college, we just ran our rear ends off all the time. And I remember thinking, I'm not really sure why we're running because it's not like I ever really get really winded when I'm playing baseball, but okay, I'll do this. And it was really hard and it was really challenging. But I remember when I got in the box my freshman year, I remember thinking in the back of my mind, I have done everything that I need to this point to be prepared. And the guy that's out there 60 feet 6 inches from me, he hasn't done the stuff that I've done to get to this point. So I was giving myself a mental edge. And it's the same thing. You're putting these guys in situations to feel like they're a little bit better than they really are a lot of times. So then we'll go to this one. It's the same idea as the side toss, same thing. You got the inverted tee. You either toss it or you hold on to it. Same idea. So this is probably a little bit more realistic because this would be like a fastball that's down and then a hanging breaking ball that's up. And these are the types of breaking balls. That one right there, that's where it was. He takes it right there. He was supposed to swing at that one that was up, but he realized that his body was so far forward that he wasn't going to be able to get a swing off, so he had to take it. So he had to learn, and he took a little bit of time after that one, and he was trying to figure out in his head, okay, why did I do that? Why did I not swing at that? I know I was supposed to. So as coaches then, we don't need to stop everything and say, okay, Zach, why did you not swing at that? Or what did your body feel like? No. Just let him do it. He'll figure it out. I promise you. And then after that round's over, then you ask him, okay, what adjustment did you make? And then he's speaking his language to you. You use that language back at him the next time when he doesn't do it, and you say, okay, you said that you felt like you were pushing off your back leg, but when you did it well, you felt like you were holding in your back hip. And so you're just using these little cues as they go along. That's all you're doing. So then we go into the BP in the machine. This is kind of some of the more challenging stuff, and a lot of the stuff will be with 2 machines. So if you've got the budget necessary for it, some of you don't, but you can be creative. It's one we like to do. It's just 3 plates, and so it's basically simulating different speeds of fastballs. You guys have probably all seen this one, but we'll do it all the time, and we'll start off by doing 2 in the back, 2 in the middle, 2 in the front, and then we get to the point where you're going 2 in the back, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, 1 in the middle. So you're constantly changing the speeds on them because when they get in the game situation, as soon as you get comfortable with a guy that's throwing 91, whatever, then your next at bat is a guy that's throwing 95, and the next at bat's a guy that's throwing 87 mile per hour cutters. So you're always having to change, you're always having to figure these things out. That's what we're doing here. I would suggest, too, it can sometimes be challenging as a thrower. I've experienced this. When they start getting closer to you, you start kind of babying it a little bit, and you aren't throwing it at the same speed, then it completely defeats the purpose. So we'll do it a lot of times with the machine. So the machine doesn't care how close they are. It's going to remain the same speed. So you don't have to worry about it when they move up and when they move back. As a thrower, it becomes a little bit more challenging, but try and maintain the same speed. You're not doing them any favors if you let up and you make it easier on them. When they get up there to that front one, they might swing and miss a couple times because it's a little more firm. So what? That's what they need because that's what happens in a game. One of the ones we did this past year in W11 in Manchester. So this one is more of like a constraint of the infield end. So we've got a net over there in front of third base, a net in front of shortstop, a net in front of second base, a net in front of first base. So for them to get a point, and we played a game with it, and they had to get the most out of 25 swings. We played a game with it, and they had to either hit it over the nets, and it had to be deep enough, which is kind of to my discretion, to score the run from third, or it had to go through. If it hit a net, no point. And so this guy right here, he's a stud. I think he ended up getting 25 points, just absolutely dominated. You'll see him in Toronto this next year, I think, probably. He's pretty good. Bichette. And so he can manipulate the barrel, he can control the bat, and so you're putting up these constraints, and then later in the rounds we started throwing breaking balls at him too to make it a little bit more challenging, but he makes it look easy. One of the ones that I love to do on a daily basis is just mixed BP. And so there's different levels to it. There's kind of 3 levels to it. This is the first level. If you're a coach and where we kind of run into trouble and problems is convincing coaches to throw breaking balls because they're just trying to throw it over the plate. But I promise you it doesn't matter if your breaking ball's good or not. You just don't want them to get on autopilot where they're just being ready to hit the fastball that's middle. It's unrealistic. So even if you throw a crappy breaking ball in there, it's going to make them figure out a way to adjust. Otherwise, they're going to look like a clown when they're swinging at a breaking ball that's up over their head or down at their shoes, and they've got no idea what they're doing, and it's a BP setting. So they'll figure it out, but you just got to mix it up. And so what we'll do is for the first week, kind of a way to set this up, the first week, 2 weeks, All we're going to do is fastball, breaking ball, and all I want you to do is swing at the fastball. So you're putting in this recognition piece that they're trying to figure out, and they're trying to find a way to only swing at the fastballs. And they're figuring out a way to figure out what it's like to be on time, to when that ball is being released, then they can see whether it's a fastball or a breaking ball. They'll kind of figure it out, and if they're late, they'll learn what it's like. So then we move into swinging at both of them in the zone. And we can even go and advance even further with this to where it's fastballs and breaking balls in the zone. We can start to go into fastballs and breaking balls in their heat zone. So we have the ability with our systems and everything that they do. Every swing that's taken in a game, you can plot it and show them exactly where it's at. So they start to learn what their heat zones are. So what we'll do then is we'll set it up and tell them, okay, only swing at a fastball or a breaking ball that's in your heat zone. So you guys can do that too. One great story real fast on Vladdy. I had him this past year, and I remember talking to him about how his strike zone judgment was so good. It's unbelievable. If he swings at a bad pitch once in a bat, he's never going to do it again. And I remember asking him, how are you so good at being able to control the strike zone? You're 19 years old, you're facing dudes that are throwing 95 to 100 miles per hour with pretty good breaking balls that are big league ready, and you're hitting 400. This doesn't make any sense. And he described it to me, and I still laugh about it when I hear it. But he said that when he was like 12 years old, his dad was throwing him BP, and he swung at a pitch that was like down at his ankles, and he swings at it, hits it, bounces off the ground, comes up and hits him in the nose. And he said he started crying, and his nose is bleeding. And he said, from that point, I just learned that if I swing at a pitch that's going to bounce and hit me in the nose, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to get hit in the nose. So he then, as crazy as this may sound, he learned through the failures of swinging at the wrong pitches that he couldn't do that, and he had to create this approach. He had to learn this approach to where if he wanted to be really good, he had to swing at the right pitches. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're helping these kids to create is an approach. They'll start to learn. They'll understand what they hit well and what they don't. Mix it up on them, throw it high, throw it low, throw it outside, throw it inside, throw breaking balls, throw changeups, throw everything at them. They'll figure it out a way. And then the last one, we'll do just 2 strikes. Everybody's kind of got their different approach or different ideas with 2 strikes and what their mentality should be or what their approach should be. I like to teach it, dominate the backside of the strike zone first and then start working out front. And you can kind of see it here. He works middle to the other way of the field really well, and then when it's an off-speed pitch, it's up, hammers it. So if you can see on this one, it's a little bit tough to see, but there's a machine set up. It's just to the right, to our right of the L screen. So the thrower will go throw one pitch, and then he puts the ball in the machine on the next one. So you want to talk about some variability and some adjustment. Sure, he knows what's coming, but he's having to figure out fastball coming into him, stay on top of it, stay inside of it. The next one, it's going away from him, ride it out, whatever it may be. Whatever his thoughts are, he's having to figure it out from pitch to pitch. It's ultimately what happens in a game. Sure, you don't see a right-hander and then a left-hander, but you're putting them in a situation to empower themselves to figure out how to make their own adjustments. Tough drill. Then you can start to go, if you got a machine, just set the machine up and change the scenarios up on them within their mind. So nothing really changes with where the pitch is, but you can start telling them, okay, on this fastball, it's a advantage count. It's a 2-0 fastball. Try and get the head out. Try and hit it over somebody's head. Okay, next pitch, we got a 2-strike fastball. We just went from a 3-1 count to a 3-2 count. So that fastball and what our thoughts are a little bit differently. So we're helping them to think through things a little bit differently, not necessarily the mechanical side of it, but the thoughts side of it too. And then if you want to get real tricky on it, what you can do is they take a swing, then have them put their head down. And then you start cranking the machine up, either up or down, or you start moving it in and out. And so it changes on them. And then when you're ready, tell them, okay, I'm ready. Then they put their head up so they don't get on autopilot. One of my least favorite things with the machine is if you never touch it, a good machine is probably going to be in the same spot every single time. And they get on autopilot, and they're only swinging at that one in the middle, so you're not they aren't having to make their adjustments. They aren't having to make their decisions on the fly. You do that and you make them put their head down, they're going to be more in at-bat mode than they are going to be in feel-good mode. So then we'll do the same thing with breaking balls, and this is just teaching them what breaking balls that they can drive and which ones they can't drive. This is a big piece. Like, I love to do it with guys on the field because they'll start to learn what the breaking ball looks like that they can actually drive out of the yard, and what the breaking ball looks like that they have no chance to do any sort of damage on. And then we'll do the same thing, move it to a 2-strike breaking ball. We'll just keep going back and forth. We'll go from round to round. We'll go from pitch to pitch. Make it challenging on them. This is kind of a cool one that we did this past year, and we started facing a lot of 2-seamers, so I started thinking about, okay, can we set up a machine that'll make it look like a right-handed 2-seamer? So basically all we did then was move the machine off to the right-handed side of the mound. So if we always put it in the middle of the mound, it doesn't really make any sense. Like, how many guys actually throw and release from the middle of the mound? It never happens, right? Like, they did a study, I think, with Max Scherzer where he's off to the very right side of the rubber, and he actually releases from like another 6 feet further out from the rubber, right? So, but we always set a machine up kind of in the middle. So we're trying to set a machine up off to the side to where they're getting more of a feel of what that looks like. So then this is set up as basically a left-handed slider. So if it was set up in the middle, it would look like a left-handed slider. But if you put it off to the right side, towards the third base side, and you set it up like a left-handed slider, it looks more like a right-handed sinker. So use your creative juices and get everything to where it's making them challenge themselves, and you're putting them in situations to where it's something different than they aren't used to seeing. That's all we're trying to get at. Next one, this is even more different, but it's a sidearm machine. So it's the same thing. It's set up to the side. It's set up like a left-handed slider, but we took the legs off the machine. So now it's coming from a slot from down here that they don't ever actually see in practice setting. I remember we did this last year, and Bo came up to me after, and he's like, man, I'm terrible at hitting sidearm guys. And I said, well, why do you think that is? He's like, well, I don't know. I never work on it. I said, perfect. We can figure out a way to work on this. Because I heard Butch talk about it yesterday, but when you get into a game situation and you face a dude that's throwing from down here, and you watch this guy and you're like, I have no sense of how to actually attack this guy, or I have no feel of how to attack this guy, you're not going to walk to the plate with a whole lot of confidence, I promise you. So putting them in situations to where they're seeing things differently, they're doing things differently, to where when they walk up there, they feel like they're prepared. And we got 2 machines set up to the sides, and these are extreme sides, to where one's coming into them, one's going away from them. You'll quickly realize, and you'll find really quick, the guys that pull off of balls, the one that's going away from them, that's kind of coming from behind them. If they start pulling off the ball, they start running out of bat. They're either hitting off the end of the bat, and they're going like this with their hands after because it hurts because they're hitting off the end of the bat, or they're just swinging and missing at it. So you can figure out a way to do that. And then the ball that's coming into them, if they get away from their body at all, then they got no shot. They're going to jam themselves even more. So moving back and forth, you can do it one pitch at a time, or same thing, you can do it sequenced. Then we go into fastballs and curveballs. So the one that's set up on the right side over here that I'm feeding right now, that one's set up like a right-handed fastball. And the one on the other side is set up like a left-handed breaking ball. And so it's the same thing. They're adjusting from pitch to pitch, but it's also a mentality and a mindset thing. We're going from the right side is a 2-0 fastball, and the left side is a 0-2 breaking ball. So the mechanics of it change, the mentality, the mindset of it changes too. Challenging stuff. This one's really tough. So this is more of a realistic setting to where it's a breaking ball is set up with the tee with the machine that's above, and then you have a fastball that's set up with the machine that's down. So it's kind of coming out of the same plane this way, the same horizontal plane is coming out of the same one, and it's either going like this or it's going like this. And that's what really good pitchers now do. That's what they're taught to tunnel. And so you get these pitchers that throw a fastball on this plane right here, and then they start the breaking ball on that same plane, and it goes down from that plane. So what we're trying to do is put them in situations where they can understand what the tunneling looks like and what each fastball looks like and breaking ball looks like. So then now this is more, it's fastball, curveball again, but we've made it, condensed it to where the machines are closer together. So it's more coming out of the same slot as opposed to coming out of a right-hand and left-hand slot. And it's the same way. You can make it to where it's sequenced. You can make it to where it starts to become random. This next one is probably the hardest one that you'll do. So if you can tell, we got two coaches standing out there. We got two machines in the middle. One of them set to a fastball, one of them set to a curveball. And me and the other coach, I'll tell him, okay, on this one, you put it in. And then I'll say, on the next one, you put it in. And on the count of three, we'll go 1, 2, 3, and we both start going down at the same time. So you got a ball that's either coming out as a fastball or you got a ball that's coming out as a breaking ball. So they quickly have to learn and realize if I want to hit this fastball or if I want to hit both of these or I want to have the opportunity to hit both of them, I got to be on time for a fastball. And you saw it, I think, in one of those clips, but he ends up taking one. And you can tell he takes it, and it was a fastball, and it was like by him by the time he was doing this. So he had no chance to actually swing it. And that's where you start coaching. You're like, well, okay, make sure that you're on time for a fastball because that's the one you want to hit. But two, like I said earlier, you can adjust and you can slow yourself down from that point. That is all I have. I'll answer some questions when I go back to that room. Hopefully I provided you guys with a few drills. I know most of you guys probably don't have two machines, but make do. Be creative. Thank you.
I'll take